There we go. Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 18th, and we are having our first class after we've come back from fall break, meaning that midterm is over and we're starting the second half of the semester. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is to make sure that I've got all of your grades entered and what your midterm grades look like. First of all, I wanted to let you know I was very, very impressed with everybody's work at midterm. There was some really excellent coding put in, and there were some really good assignments. And so I was really excited to see pretty much everyone in here has learned how to write code in MATLAB, which was my goal for the first half of the semester. So good job. The next thing is your midterm grade, which is posted to the portal. Now, the grade in Moodle may or may not reflect your midterm grade, okay? And the reason for that is the Moodle gradebook is a little bit unpredictable in my experience, in the fact that it takes into account only the grades that I've entered. So if you've missed an assignment and I don't enter a 0 for it, Moodle doesn't figure that in. So what I do is I take your Moodle grades, your actual submissions, and I pull them into a spreadsheet and compute them based on the criteria from the syllabi. And so if you go back to your syllabus, ES 1060 syllabus or computer science 1010 syllabus, you'll see the percentages are a little bit different. The elements are the same, but the percentages are a little bit different depending on what class you're in. So if you take a look at that, you'll be able to figure out what hang on, that's what just happened. I'm echoing. Hang on a second. Oh, I bet Derek turned up. Okay, never mind. Somebody came on and left their mic on. All right, that's what it is. So we're good. Anyway, so having said that, we're just going to talk a little bit about that. But what I wanted to say more than anything is, if you have any grades that you don't think reflect your performance, there are a couple of people who made submissions and the submissions didn't come through. So if you see something that doesn't look right about your grade, what I'd like you to do is to set a Calendly appointment with me, which basically will give us some time together. And the reason that I'd like to do a Calendly appointment, and it's not coming up here, but it's right down here. There we go. This calendly.com/Astrid-Northrup. If you go there and you set an appointment with me, either face-to-face or by Zoom, I can spend the time going through your gradebook with you and making sure that I have everything recorded. And if you've made a late submission, I can give you credit for it and so forth. So if that happens, you're going to get full credit for it at the end of the term, which is your only permanent grade. The midterm grade is just a marker of your progress to date, and it's a chance for us to just stop and take a look at what's going on and make sure that we have everything pulled together. But the reason that I want to have you come meet with me either by Zoom, excuse me, or face-to-face is just because I need some undivided time with each person that has some issues, because I won't be going back and checking your work after midterm unless you alert me to something. So if you have issues, please use Calendly, schedule an appointment, and we'll get you squared away. All right, so the next thing is, for the second half of the semester, we are going to be using a program called Excel. And some of you may have used Excel already, in which case you're going to be in for a treat, because the first couple of weeks, things are going to go pretty easily for you. If you've never used Excel, I wanted to let you know what it is and why I'm choosing to use it in this class. So Excel is basically a problem-solving spreadsheet program. And what Excel does is basically everything. One of my colleagues, some of you may know Tim Glatzer, but Tim coined a phrase about Excel, and he said, It's not the best tool for anything, but it's the second best tool for everything. And I think that is very apt. So the reason that I like to teach it, I've taught it for years for my engineering students. And the reason that I want to teach it to both my engineering and my computer science students is because Excel is everywhere. Every computer that is a Microsoft-based program has a Microsoft-based platform, will have Excel on it. And so when you go into an office, whether you're an intern or full-time employee, you're always going to be able to use Excel. Now, I want to make a disclaimer right now. I'm not authorizing the use of Google Sheets. Okay. If you use Google Sheets, you're doing it at your own risk. Google Sheets will tell you that it will save a file as an XLS file, which is an Excel file, but I think there's some glitches in it. And I don't know if Google Sheets has the full capability of Excel that we're going to be using in this class. So I really want you to use Excel. Now, the other thing is, if you are on a college computer, Excel is available to you as a student. So if you have a different login, or if you're working from a computer without a virtual desktop, if you're working on your own, you may not have access to Excel. So once again, talk to me and I'll show you how to access a VM. We did that for some people with MATLAB, but if you don't know how to do it, please take care of it. Okay, so Excel stores files in what are called workbooks, and workbooks are a collection of spreadsheets. So what you can see on this spreadsheet, for example, is you have columns that are labeled by number, by letters, and rows. So columns go up and down, just like a column that's supporting a building, and a row goes back and forth. So they're horizontal on your screen, that are labeled by numbers. And these go on basically forever. I mean, you can see we go up to like YZ, and then if we continue overward, you'll see that we get into double alphabet designations again. So I mean, there's just, you'll never run out of room on an Excel spreadsheet. So if you take a column and a row, the little piece of the worksheet that is designated between a row and a column, for example, this would be C1, is called a cell. All right. So you have rows and columns that are comprised of cells. You can also see that, like, we have a name of a worksheet down here. It's just called sheet 1. But if you wanted a second worksheet, you could call it sheet 2, and you can bring information back and forth between the sheets. If you don't like the name sheet 1, you can right click on it and you can rename it. So you can rename this, for example, class example. And then if you want to rename sheet 2, you click on it to get over to that sheet, right click on it, rename it class example 2. Okay. So right now you see where my tab class example 2 is forward or highlighted. So that means I'm working in that second sheet. But if I come over here, I click this, now I'm working in the first sheet. All right. So you can type in anything that you want in terms of alphanumeric characters, but this is not. What'll happen is this is in a single cell, but the text will cut across the cells if there's nothing in a cell to interrupt it. If you put something in a different cell, you can say, for example, this is C1, okay? Then it truncates this, but if you look up in the formula line up here, you'll see that all of the data is still stored in that cell, it's just not visible. Another thing you can do is if you have something large in this row or this column, something that's too long for the cell, you can stretch out that cell and make it bigger. So now you can see that A1, you still have a single cell here, but it's has more space to type things in. So then it won't truncate unless I put something here. And then if I want it to be longer still, I can put it like that. All right. So those are just some of the things that you can do. If you put data in a cell, you can put, like I said, you can put text, like this is C1. You can also put in numbers like 45, 67, and so forth. And then one of the simplest things you can do that's quite effective, especially if you're working in business applications, anything that you have in this number, you can sum that, and you can do it a couple of different ways. You can add them up either by coming up here to the auto sum key. This symbol, sigma, if you've not taken statistics or if you're not in calculus, that is a symbol for summation. So if I just hit that auto sum, Excel highlights the numbers above it. It's guessing what the sum is going to be of, and then it will just create that sum, right? If you wanted it to include more things, like let's do this 67, and then let's come down here and go 44 and 32. Okay, if I try auto sum here, it's going to think that I want to do these two numbers, but if in fact I want to do all of these numbers, I can stretch up the boundaries of the cells, which is always more fun. You think, there you go. And I got everything, and once they're all captured, it'll give me the sum of everything. Now, you can also format in Excel, just like you can in Word or any other Microsoft product. So for example, if I want to have this, right now I'm in Calibri 11 font. If I wanted it to be in a different font, like for example, if I wanted it to be in Algerian, there you go. Okay, and if I wanted it bigger or smaller, I could make it bigger or smaller. I can also change the color. Anything that you can do with a Microsoft font or a Microsoft display, I can highlight it and so forth. Okay, so you can make anything look the way that you want it to look. Now, what we're talking about today are kind of basic functions, and we're going to continue a little bit more, but in Excel, there's also the capabilities of doing formulas, which I'll show you some basic formulas today. And then there's a whole bunch of predetermined formulas in Excel. And then there's also, you can put in your own formulas and display anything that you want. So it's very versatile. You can also do all kinds of graphs. They're not quite as easy as they are in MATLAB, but you can display all kinds of graphs. You can do matrices, which what we talked about arrays in MATLAB. We're not going to do it in Excel. They're quite a bit more difficult in Excel. That's where MATLAB just exceeds itself. And then there's also a hardcore programming environment built into Excel. It uses a language called C++. So there's all kinds of things you can do. And in the 8 weeks that we have to work with it, we're not going to get to everything, but I just want you to be really conversant with Excel. There's a lot of people, not so much programmers, but a lot of engineers and a lot of business people for whom Excel has just changed the way they do their lives. So like, for example, let's do a really quick one here. I'm going to do you remember when we did our, when we did the little program to calculate your GPA? Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to pull up an academic map. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of replicate what we did with MATLAB. And short of the we won't do graphs today, but I'm going to take a look at academic maps, and I'm going to pull off the academic map for computer science. And I'm going to just snip out the first semester, semester 1. And I'm going to just pull this over. So I'm just copying it with my snipping tool, which is a very, if you don't use the snipping tool, they're fantastic because they're tiny. They don't take any room in memory. And they're just really, it's really a handy thing. It just produces a little flat file. So if I want to eliminate everything here. So the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight. So the way that I did that was I put my cursor here in the first cell, and then I held my left cursor down and dragged it across everything I want to get rid of. And then I hit the delete key. And now I have no data in my cells anymore. So what I want to do here is I want to create a what is my GPA program. So the first one is I'm going to have the course name, right? So this is exactly what we've done in MATLAB. The next we would have the credits. And last we would have the grade. Then the next thing we're going to have to do is to calculate the quality points, which would be, let's do this. Call this the points for grade. And then the next thing we would have would be the quality points. All right. So I need to expand this a little bit. There we go. All right. So the course name here, we have English 1010, then COSC 1010, and then math 2200, and last but not least, ES 1000. The credits for each of those classes is 3, 4, 5, and 1. And then you'll notice, if you remember from the calculation, one thing that I need to have is the total number of credits. So I'm going to use my auto sum function up here and sum those, and I come up with, what did I miss? 3, 4, 7, 12, 13, 5, 9. This is wrong. Ha ha ha. Look at that. 5, 9, 10, 13. So this is the correct number. There are not 17 credits in this first semester, are there? First point. All right, there we go. So let's just say that I'm going to go ahead and capitalize this. An A, a B, a C, and a D. All right. The points for each of those grades is 4, 3, 2, and 1. Oops, this is 4. What am I doing? 4. There we go. And then the quality points would be the credits times the points. So how do I do a multiplication like that? Well, I want to take the content of cell C2 and multiply it by the content of cell E2. Okay, so what I do is I start by telling it's a formula. The way you do that is you hit an equal sign, and I just tell it C2 times E2, and it will give me that multiplication. Okay, now another cool thing about Excel that is extraordinarily helpful is I don't have to type that formula in over and over again. Excel uses relative email addresses. So if you ask for the product of those two numbers in F2, when you copy it, Control C, and then highlight copy, what it's going to do is, instead of, if you look at the formula, this is C2E2, this is C3E3, C4E4, and C5E5. So in other words, it understands that you're not really saying, I want to take these exact cells. What I want to do is take the same relative position, because that's kind of the best function of spreadsheets. Now you can anchor them, which means that you can do the sum. If you wanted to do that product, like for example, if I said this is going to be C2 times E2, all right, but instead of wanting it to be relative, I can anchor it by putting dollar signs in front of it. That's just a way of saying I really mean C2, E2 every single time, not relative. So then if I copy that one, you'll see that every single cell is C2, E2. Okay, and the product is C2E2. Let's scoot that out a little bit just to give us a little bit more room. I could just move this. Hang on. I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to copy it down here. All right, there we go. So I got a little bit more room to work with. And then I can small up this cell again. All right. So in order to calculate my GPA, I now have the total number of credits. I have the total number of quality points. And I know that to get my GPA, I need to divide my quality points by my total credits. So the first thing I'm going to do is to auto sum these. There's my quality points. And then I'm going to say my GPA is, and then what I'm going to do is take this cell, which is F6, and divide it by this, which is C6. So I say equals F6 divided by C6. And there's my grade point average. Okay, so this is kind of like the basics of how you do specialized formulas, whatever you want them to be. Now, the other thing is that there's a bunch of predetermined formulas in Excel. And if you click formulas, it'll give you categories. So for example, if you wanted to use logical formulas, you'll see that you have all of these different formulas that you could use. If you want to use date and time, you can do that as well. So for example, let's just say that you wanted to put in some dates and you want to format them in a certain way. What you can do is you can highlight a bunch of cells right click, format. And then you say, I want these to be dates. And then you can determine the different formats. So for example, if you put in this format, it would be year, month, day. This would just be month and day and so forth. This would be, it'll format it to be, to print out the first few letters of the date. So this says 14 March. So if I put in here 3/14, you'll see that it displays that as 14-March. So you have a lot of flexibility, and these things that are very difficult in some programming languages are quick in Excel, which is one of the features that it has. Now, if you want to take a look at math and trig functions, for example, you can see that you can find a cosine is the arc cosine, or it's more aptly called the inverse cosine. So in your classes, you may have seen this as cosine -1. So it's the inverse function. Or you input an angle and it return, or you input a cosine and it returns the angle. Yes. Sorry? Secant. Yeah. Well, no. The secant is, let me show you. All right. So the cosine, this is just text, is if you have a right triangle, it's the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Okay. And the secant is 1 over the cosine, or in other words, it's the hypotenuse over the adjacent. Okay. So the arc cosine is the angle whose cosine is whatever the cosine is. Okay, so they're not, yeah, it's a fine point, but so secant is 1 over the function, whereas secant is 1 over the cosine. The inverse cosine is the inverse function. Okay, yeah, good point. Let's see. My Zoom decided to update. Oh, thanks, Michaela. I get it. Zoom is always a joy. So anyway, so in other words, you have a boatload of regular functions here that are often used, and then also you can create your own functions. You can highlight things, you can change fonts, you can change formats. So for example, here's another one. Let's just say, what is my gross pay? So we're going to talk about, you have a job and you're working, and basically how do you compute gross pay? Well, you take your hourly rate and you multiply it by the number of hours, right? So basically, let's just say that we have some dates, right? So let me cap block. Monday, we just work 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and you work 6 hours, 5 hours, and 2 hours. Okay. So if your hourly rate, let's say that I'm going to insert a column. Here's another thing. I want another column here. So I can go up to the letter B, right click, and it says insert, and it gives me a new column. Now that also, if you have any of those relative cell addresses in your formulas, it will scoot for you. You don't have to go back and correct anything. It recognizes that how you've scooted your formulas, and everything is based on new cell addresses. So like you come up here, remember it used to be based on C2 and E2. It's now based on D2 and F2. So it's very efficient that way. Let's say my hourly rate is $20. Okay, now I don't want it to show up as 20. I want it to show up as $20. So I right click and then I format. And I want it to be currency, and I want it to have 2 decimal places. So if you type in $20, it'll think that you have a piece of text. Okay, so it's not going to make a numeric operation on it. So you need to make sure that you use the formatting, or else it's not going to do that. All right, so how much do you get paid on Monday? Let's put this, daily pay, daily earnings, let's say. So on Monday, we have 6 hours times $20 an hour. So we say equal the cell above, which is C22, times the hourly rate, which is B24. However, we want it to always be B24, right? So we anchor it, $B, $24, and we get 120 bucks. So then I'm going to copy that over here. And because I anchored it, it keeps that same B24 as my hourly rate. It doesn't scoot it over, but it changes the first cell. So in other words, here we have C22, D22, E22, but every single time it's B24 because I put the dollar signs in and anchored it. All right, and then I want to know my total. And so I'm going to total my hours. Then go back to home to do my auto sum. Okay, and guesses. Yep, guesses correctly. And then, so I have a total, so if I spelled it wrong, total of 22 hours or 13 hours. And then I have two choices here. I can auto sum these three, or I can copy the cell from here. Control C, Control V. Now, the only difference is this cell was formatted in general, so this doesn't format as currency. So if I delete that cell, and instead of doing that, I auto sum from the left, it understands it's currency because it's copying from currency-based cells. All right, so I love Excel. I've been using Excel for a long, long time since through many, many changes. And I keep, like I said, I even keep your grades in Excel because it's just such an amazing, efficient way to keep track of things. So I'm going to show you a couple things in just a moment. But when we do homework, first of all, I'm working from this book, which is called Spreadsheet Tools for Engineers Using Excel. And just to reiterate, if you're using Google Sheets or a different spreadsheet program, you're using it at your own risk. I really want everything to be in Excel because I can predict what the functions look like. And also I know the capabilities of Excel. So I know I'm not going to give you something that exceeds the capabilities. Google Sheets, I do use Google Sheets. One of the things I love about Google Sheets is when you make a change, it auto saves. Excel does not auto save. You have to save it yourself. Okay. So I like that some ways and I don't like it some ways. I like it because I never have to worry about losing my work. But sometimes if you make a mistake, you may lose your good work to a mistake that gets saved over it. There's one other thing I wanted to show you, or a couple other things I want to show you. Let's just say, let's go back to this. Let me share my screen again, just a second. All right, how easy is it to change something in Excel? All right, so here, for example, let's say with your courses, we're computing our grade point average, and it turns out that here in ES 1000, instead of getting a D, you're going to get a C instead. Okay, so that means that instead of being a 1, it's a 2, and it will automatically recalculate everything. So it recalculates as soon as you put in that new piece of data, it will recalculate based on that. You don't have to tell it to calculate, you don't have to do anything, just put the number in. And if you've got your cell assignments correct, it will work beautifully. All right, so here are some, these are some really basic functions of Excel. The next thing I want to do is to show you how to save your file, which is because, like I said, it says autosave is on. I don't really know what that means. I don't know how often it's saving. I don't know anything. So if you just say file and then save as, put it somewhere that you like it to go. I always put things in either the folder for this semester or the folder for this class. Are you going to really do this? There it is. There's my H drive, which is where I like to keep everything. I have a folder called Computer Science 1010. And I'm going to save it over there. It automatically assumes that you want to save it as book 1, but I'm going to call it example for class on October 18th. All right. So now I have that spreadsheet and I can pull it back up, just file, retrieve, and blah, blah, blah. All right. So, let's see, was there anything else I wanted to show you with this? Oh, one other thing. Let's just say that you wanted to do another class example. So in other words, I want to pull over some of this stuff. Let's just say I want to pull over this grade point average stuff. All right. All I do here is I just hold my left button down on my mouse, my pointing device, and I paint everything. Then I can either right click and copy, or I can Control-C, which is an old copying command, bring it over here and paste it. I would just like to paste. And there it is, okay? And once again, regardless of where I put it, the relative cell addresses will stay fixed based on what I did in my first spreadsheet. So, all right, do you guys have any questions so far? All right, so let's get out of the screen share and go back. So this is the book that I'm going to be using. If you have a copy of this, it could be very helpful to you. And it is listed as being a required text, or at least a recommended text on the syllabus. If you don't have it, I'll be posting the assignments. So the first assignment would be from the textbook. Actually, chapter 1 of this is pretty short and simple, but chapter 2, beginning here with exercises 2.2 and going through, are a little bit better. So I will post these. They'll be up on our Moodle page. And I will, I'll put directions for that. It will be due a week from today, so that we'll have a lab period in between to work on it. All right. So we'll have, if you have the textbook, I would recommend that you skim or read chapters 1 and 2. Best way to do that is if you have the Excel program open on your computer at the same time, so that you can do the exercises interactively. And then I will post the exercises, and we'll work on them. We'll talk a little bit more about some more advanced functions in Excel on Monday. We'll work on this Monday in lab, and then it will be due Wednesday. All right. Do you guys have any questions for me? All right. Let's see. Anyone out in Zoom land? You guys have any questions for me? Derek or Michaela? All right, then make sure between now and Monday, make sure that you are able to access Excel on your computer. And like I said, by the end of the day today, I'll have everything posted. So if you want to get started, please do. But the real work with Excel will start next Monday morning. So, all right, I'm going to stop recording. Have a wonderful day. And please make an appointment with me if you need to clear up anything about your midterm grades. And other than that, I will see you Monday morning at 9 in this room.